Yeah, if you guys don't know me, I'm Brian Young. If you don't know me, you're probably lucky for that. But I'm the vice president of the chapter. I have been for 7 years, and I will never ever be president, which is what I promise every single year when everyone asks me about it. So it's not going to happen. Scott's a much better man than I am. But I'm very pleased to actually introduce Taylor Edrington tonight. So who's actually fished the Arkansas River? Probably who hasn't fished the Arkansas River? Okay, there's people you got to focus on, right?
I got some experts in the crowd.
But Taylor actually owns and he's president of Royal Gorge Anglers. They're the only Orvis endorsed place in the entire Arkansas drainage. They're the oldest. They've been around since 1990. I mean, they've been around forever. It's a great shop. If you haven't been down there, if you haven't taken their guide service, I really strongly recommend it. Just a wonderful place down there. Taylor's he basically grew up on the river. I mean, what a great way to kind of grow up. Wish that was me, but we can try it now. But growing up on the river, I mean, his dad's owned it since 1990. Taylor went to school after guiding for a bunch of years. He went to school over at the lead school over at CU, graduated with a business degree. Went up and guided in Alaska for about 10 years, I think. And then actually came back and bought the shop from his dad back in 2010. So he's been owning it for about 10, 12 years now. He's done a phenomenal job in really growing it. I mean, the business has grown in leaps and bounds, the travel side and the fly shop side and the guiding side. And he's just done a great job of that. He's got 3 world records. I don't remember which ones they are. So ask him about those after the show tonight. They're kind of interesting stories, I'm sure, behind all of those. The travel services is pretty cool. So find out about that if you're interested in going on any kind of travel trips. He's guided and hosted trips on 6 different continents. So pretty cool experiences he's got behind him. He's got a wonderful staff there, just from top to bottom. And if you don't know about the Orvis endorsement, it's a tough thing to get. You pay a lot of money for it every year. You got to get vetted, and it's a big deal. So being a really long-term, one of the best Orvis endorsed outfitters in the state for a long, long time, he's a great partner and someone that we all look up to. So I'm going to turn it over to Taylor.
All right. Well, I hope I can live up to that. Probably the best intro I've ever had. So, and I hope all of you can handle the entire presentation because that raffle looks pretty tasty over there. So, welcome to the home of the mountain lions, and thanks so much, Brian, again for bringing me down. Just a joy to be in front of people again. I was in Virginia this last week talking to folks, and everybody's jazzed about just being together, being in a group again, being able to talk fishing amongst each other and kind of get away from the remote. For all of you that are viewing, remotely, welcome as well. And hopefully we answer a lot of questions for folks that, most of the crowd has fished the Arkansas. So that's great. Not always the case. Of course, when I speak nationally, very few people have fished the Arkansas, but it's always nice to see local folks come and enjoy a resource such as the Arkansas, which is a phenomenal fishery, as most of you know. So a little bit about myself. Go ahead. It was working before. All right, we're good. There we go.
Just a little slow.
So, like Brian said, I've been really fortunate to grow up in this industry. Grew up with my dad obviously owning a fly shop, and who doesn't love that, right? It's a great life to lead, and have been really fortunate to share a lot of different water time with a lot of different people all over the globe. Every year, on a normal year, I host trips in Norway, in saltwater venues such as Cuba, Belize, Mexico, and also, here in the U.S. in Louisiana. I just got back from 3 weeks in Louisiana hosting redfish stuff down there. So, a lot of great stuff out there for all of you to experience. For those of you that are just getting into the sport, just understand that, it doesn't end in Colorado. Go out, seek out new venues, new experiences, and keep on trucking. That's what this sport's all about. New fish, new places, and new people along the way. So go ahead. You might pick up a copy of the summer issue of Fly Fisherman Magazine, kind of as a recap of this presentation, and a little more in depth on some other things. I did write a feature article in the July edition, this past July, of Fly Fisherman Magazine. You can view those online at any point in time. You can sign up for Fly Fisherman Magazine. It's a great resource. How many people get Fly Fisherman Magazine, whether online or hard copy? Great. So many of you probably saw the article. Talked a little bit about a drainage called Grape Creek, which is the largest tributary to our river that has a potential mining issue on it. Just things to be aware of. Definitely encourage you to go check that article out, just as a refresh on fly fishing the Arkansas and just some news and different things that are going on with the drainage currently and over the last decade. Go ahead. That's the article itself. Go ahead. So how many folks have been by our fly shop at one point or another over the last 32 years? Great. So thanks so much for the patronage. And for those of you who haven't been by, we're 2 miles west of Canyon City. We've got our own turning lane right off US 50 and got a great little fly shop there. Really proud of what we do there, both in the retail storefront and on the river. So we hope to see you sometime in the future. So we are going to cover the entire year on the Arkansas. So, you know, we're going to start in this time period. I always like to kind of start where we are, and then we're going to move out and come full circle every season, broken down on the Arkansas. And kind of how I look at this is, you know, 3 kind of criteria: flow rate, weather, and also aquatic activity. So bug life. That's kind of the 3 things that I focus on throughout these seasons. How that drives trout activity, that's what we're really going to dive into tonight. Okay, so there's a lot here, and I'm going to show you a lot of different patterns and a lot of different things that hopefully you can jot down or take a mental note of. If you ever have any questions, grab a rack card, grab a business card from me. I'm always happy to answer any questions via email or give us a call anytime. Our staff is great, and they can take great care of you. But I'm going to move rather quickly because I want to give you a full scope of the entire season on the Arkansas and you know, go through the paces there. And then I'm going to give you a snapshot, a limited snapshot of access, right? The Arkansas is an enormous basin, a lot of access points, the most public access of any river in the state of Colorado. And then you add in the Arkansas tailwater, we've got a whole nother can of worms to open up there. So I'm really going to touch briefly on that. I'm going to give you some great resources that are found on our website for that as well to go explore on your own. And then we're going to wrap up with just a few minutes about the Arkansas tailwater itself, which has really turned into one of the most popular fisheries in the state, especially in the winter, spring, and fall seasons. Okay. Go ahead. All right, so where is the Arkansas? Okay, many of you know, you've been there, right? But we start headwater at Leadville, moves out to and through the Eastern Plains, right? And you know, our primary focus is on the 102-mile gold medal section. So if you go to the next slide, one more, we're talking about the section from the Lake Fork confluence at the Arkansas all the way down to Parkdale Recreation Area, as well as the Canyon City specific area of the Arkansas. So 100+ miles. It's a lot of water, okay? Most guide services focus on some parts of the South Platte, some things there. You know, we also guide on the South Platte and the Gunnison. So we've got a lot of things going just on the Arkansas itself. But, you know, this is a fantastic fishery. It speaks for itself. Go for the next slide there. You can kind of take a snapshot. Go ahead and scroll through these. A quick snapshot at what gold medal means, okay? And you may hear some different terms out there. You may hear blue ribbon in Montana, very similar designation. And this is just a quality designation. Doesn't mean I can't keep a fish there. It doesn't mean I can't fish bait there even in some areas, okay? This just means what is the quality of this trout fishery look like? Give you some ideas of what we've got on this 100+ mile section. Your requirements up top, 60 pounds per acre, Arkansas 170, and I can tell you it's much more than that this year. I just saw the data. We're sitting at about 210 pounds per acre this year, but it's not been published yet. And, you know, kind of give you some insight to that. And then 75 fish over 16 inches per acre. For many of you that have been fishing the river for a long time and really have been fishing, you know, in the last 3 to 4 years, I think you'll agree that we're seeing more and more big fish in the Arkansas as well. So not only are we seeing, you know, a lot of fish, but we're also seeing bigger and bigger fish, you know, a lot of fish over the 20-inch class. And that's been a lot of fun to experience and see that transformation. You know, a little bit of history on the Arkansas. The Arkansas was almost completely killed by heavy metal mining. Okay, so in the, you know, early 1900s, mid 1900s, we had, you know, some of the heaviest mining activity in the state at Leadville. Okay, many of you maybe know the history of the Climax mine and many other mines in that area. In the 1980s, after contaminant, you know, issues in the river for a period of 50+ years, the Superfund cleanup came in at California Gulch and really kind of transformed the river again. Naturally has come around over the course of the last 40 years into what it is now. With the help of biologists and appropriate stocking and different things there, but the brown trout population, which it comprises about 80% of the fishery, hasn't been stocked for 28 years, okay? So that'll tell you just, you know, an incredible snapshot at where a river can take itself naturally. And that's all the aquatic environment, the biomass of bugs, so to speak, okay? So we've got, you know, prolific amounts of stoneflies, mayflies, caddis, midges, crane flies now, that's a new one, green drakes, gray drakes, slate drakes, brown drakes, red quills, and I'm going to go through the gamut as we go through the seasons, but just kind of gives you an idea of how these trout rebound, okay, and how this river can sustain itself as such. So go ahead. Just a look at a couple of fish out of the Arkansas, one a tailwater fish and one a freestone fish. This is a Canyon City fish on the left. There are some enormous brown trout and enormous rainbows in the Canyon City stretch. And there's some big fish, you know, up in the gold medal stretch itself from Bighorn on up, but some real specimens and, you know, kind of a testament to the food in the river. Snapshot of the river itself in a braided section in Bighorn Canyon in fall colors there. Go ahead. Another Canyon City fish this past spring. So starting to be some really big rainbows in this river. We are seeing some fish pushing the 10-pound class in areas. We're seeing a lot of fish, like I said, in the, you know, 18 to 20+ mark. And, you know, just super healthy fish. And these are mostly now Gunnison River rainbows that have been transplanted from the Gunnison drainage. Obviously, our hatchery is growing them in the state. This is the strongest strain of rainbow that we have found that can really thrive in rivers like the Arkansas that are big and harsh, big runoffs and big temperature swings from winter to summer and different things there. Brown trout thrive in those type of ecosystems, whereas rainbows do not typically. We found that these Gunnison River rainbows are the perfect fit for these type of rivers. And so most of our hatcheries in the state of Colorado are starting to implement only GRRs into these types of rivers, okay? So just a quick snapshot, and this is out of one of my slides on tactical or Euro nymphing. I actually give a full presentation on this as well. But I'm not going to cover all of this in depth. I just want to give you a snapshot at what Euro nymphing or tactical nymphing means, because I am going to show some patterns throughout the seasons that correspond directly to this technique. So I know a few of you are really into contact nymphing methods. Just a show of hands, how many people, tight line nymph, Euro nymph, any of those terms, okay? So a few. So hopefully this will be enlightening to a lot of you. You know, and the basic idea is the Arkansas River Freestone is a gradient freestone river. Lots of boulders, lots of pocket water, lots of heavy velocity areas that are really difficult to get a fly down into. In a basic nymphing rig, sometimes we just don't understand with an indicator rig where our flies are, right? There's a lot of guessing to it, okay? So with a Euro nymphing rig, in a basic sense of the word, go ahead. All we're doing here is, and I'm just going to kind of step back out of the frame so everybody can see just a basic rig here, okay? Our heaviest fly is at what's called the point. That's the bottom fly in this specific rig, okay? There's no indicator involved with exception of what we call cider material. That cider material is positioned in a section of the leader that should be directly above the surface of the water, sometimes into the surface of the water, okay? From there, all we're doing is we're keeping direct contact with the flies by lifting our arm and the rod tip, okay? Does that kind of make sense? Okay, so less slack involved in our nymphing system, more contact, no indicator, no bobber. Sorry, I don't want to offend everybody. I mean, it is a bobber. And so, you know, the system allows us to fish heavier flies and get into heavier velocity areas and heavier structure faster. And it also allows us to feel strikes, okay? How many strikes do you feel with an indicator rig? Not many. Sometimes the fish just hammers it and takes, right? That doesn't count. So with this rig, we are in contact with the fly, right? And so we feel a lot of these strikes, okay? This little man over here is really getting into it. How many strikes do you think you feel out of 100 when you hook a fit, when you hook up? Out of 100 strikes, how many do you feel?
Probably 75.
Yep. Okay. So a testament to what that kind of means there. We're still visual, but we're also adding that feel, okay? And it's just an incredible way to fish, okay? Instead of staring at an indicator, we are in direct contact with the fishing. We're in contact with the fishing as such that we feel the riverbed, we feel the fish, we feel the fly, okay? We also see what's going on with our cider material, so on and so forth. Okay, so just a brief intro to contact, what I like to term contact nymphing. That's an easy way to term it. Go ahead. Just an intro to arm position, where the rod tip needs to be. And if you have any questions about this, basic or advanced, I'm happy to help you after the seminar as well. And just, you know, a brief comment about the Euro nymphing flies that I'm going to show you. They can be used in an indicator rig just as easy, okay? We're tying a lot of these Euro nymphing flies on jig hooks and competition hooks with wider gaps, sharper points. They're just, in general, better flies, okay? Flies evolve like everything else. Every other piece of gear in fly fishing, you know, I see more and more indicator nymphers use Euro nymphing flies, you know, on a daily basis. So that's always great to do there. Okay. So kind of diving into the winter season, you're going to see some numbers on every slide that we go through. Water temperature being the first number, flow rate being the second number. Now, real quickly about how flows work on the Arkansas. The main section that we're talking about is the freestone section, and freestone means no dam, right? Okay, tailwater, dam, freestone, no dam. Okay, the first dam on the river is at Pueblo Reservoir. Okay, but we do have contributing tail races at Lake Creek and Clear Creek. Okay, we release water based on a specific schedule. It's called the Voluntary Flow Management Program, and it's a revolutionary system for watersheds like the Arkansas, one of the first. Okay, and so what we've done over the course of 20 years is we've taken major stakeholders, recreationalists, fly fishermen, boaters, so on and so forth, irrigators downstream, which are the major stakeholders, right? We all know that. But we've come together as a group and we've said, okay, when does it make the most sense for the fishery and for recreation in general to move water downstream to our downstream reservoirs for storage? Okay, when does it make the most sense to take it from our high mountain reservoirs at Lake Creek, Clear Creek, and even on the other side of the Continental Divide through the Fry Arc Tunnel over the top? And when does it make the most sense to release it for the fishery, so on and so forth? So we've designed a system to where we typically release water in the wintertime, typically right now. So if I see it's about 500 CFS on average, today it's about 400, just because we have a little bit lower snowpack than expected. 500 CFS on average. The native flow without any contributing release would be about 250 CFS. So we've almost doubled our flow downstream. So we've elected to, in the winter, keep a little bit more water in the water column in order to keep water temperature more stable for the fishery and move water downstream to make room for what's coming in the spring, which is what? Snowmelt. Okay. So that's the design in the winter, okay? And then when we move into the summer, we release very little water during runoff, okay? Then we bump water up, release water up when the water typically gets hot in those hotter months. What that does is it keeps the water temperature cooler, right? Then when we go into the fall, we crank the water down again for what? Brown trout spawning. Okay, and then in the spring, we crank the water down from this level down to 250, 300 for rainbow trout spawning and brown trout fry emergence. Okay, so fishery actually comes number one. Is that amazing? Pretty cool. Doesn't happen on most rivers, I can tell you that. But it works really well. This process works well, and nothing's perfect. Every year it's a little different. But you're going to see these flow rates, and those are really important, and I'll talk about that. So when we move into the winter season, where are fish at? Okay, typically in the fall, and remember, 80% brown trout river, okay? Typically in the fall, most of our brown trout are in what we call post-spawn feeding lies after the fall, right? They've spawned, they move into what I term deep areas of least resistance. They don't want to expend calories. They want to be lazy, okay? And that's just typical in post-spawn. Whether it's rainbows or browns, you're going to expect that, okay? So fish are in deep tailouts. Pretty simple, okay? I would say 95% of the fish that we're hooking right now are in slower tailouts below heavy riffles, okay? And then typically we're focusing on the nymph category, the larva category, okay? There's just not a lot of hatch activity, pretty typical in tailwaters and freestones alike, although you see a little bit more hatch activity on tailwaters in the winter because of what? The water temperature is higher and more consistent. Look at this water temperature range, right? 34 to 42, almost a 10-degree swing. You don't see that on tailwaters, okay? Go ahead. A few flies to focus on, one more. Couple midges, okay? ICU midge, one of my favorites. Heavy, wide, tied on a wide gap hook. You're gonna see a lot of my patterns tied on wide gap competition hooks. Why do you like wide gap hooks? What do you think? Anybody? So when you're setting the hook, not only can you drive the hook farther, right? But you can also create more leverage on the hook point. Okay, that's what also is a huge advantage with a jig style hook. So you know, love this pattern. It's your basic midge larva, right? It's thread on a hook. Throw some UV on it. You know, that a little body segmentation. Have something red. Have something olive. Have something dark, brown. You know, Pat Dorsey's medallion midge. How many of you fish this? Oh my goodness. Okay. Take note of this fly, and anywhere you go in the winter, make sure you have at least a dozen in your box. Size 20, 22, and 24. This is a medallion midge. This is the best midge pupa you'll ever fish, in my opinion, anywhere. Okay, go ahead. Lots and lots and lots of caddis in most freestones, but the Arkansas takes it another level. We've got over 50 different types of caddis in the Arkansas, okay? Caddis need to be present 365 in your box if you're coming to the Arkansas. Larva, pupa, adult, egg layer during the caddis season. Larva during the winter and springtime, that's your focal point, right? They're not hatching, but they are present on the riverbed. They're crawling, they're drifting, they're in cases. If you like to fish case caddis patterns, that's a great pattern too, okay? Another caddis larva, it's called a shot glass. That's a roller caddis. How many people fish crane fly larvae? Okay. They are prevalent in pretty much every river in the state of Colorado. There are a lot of crane flies in pretty much every drainage. This is a pattern that people don't think about enough, okay? This is a huge food source. It's a big bug. Even a micro is that big. Even an immature crane fly larva is that big. And then a mature crane fly larva, you're talking, I mean, could be 3-4 inches long, right? So that's a cheeseburger, okay? You need to have cranes in your box wherever you go. This is Frank Smethurst's crane bomb. This is a great Euro-nymphing fly, okay? Tied to where the hook will automatically roll, okay? So hook shank is on the bottom of the river if you're Euro-nymphing it, okay? Incredible pattern to think about. Okay, go ahead. Who knows this fly? I know this guy. Mop fly. This is called the cheater, okay? It fishes pretty much everywhere. You guys know those chamois that you wash your car with, right? That have the little danglies on them. Those guys, you go get one at CarQuest and you cut those little dangly things off and you tie it on a hook and you call it good. That thing will catch fish anywhere. It's about movement and it's a breadwinner. Go ahead. This fish was caught last week. So I mean, yeah, plenty of fishing to be done. You can see snow on the hill in the background. I mean, it's you know, great time to be out there. There's little to no shelf ice right now. It's been a really mild winter, obviously on the Front Range, and plenty of snow up in the hills, but down in our neck of the woods, we're kind of termed the banana belt. A lot of 60-degree days in our area. Okay. Okay. Now moving into mid-February. Okay, so about a month from now, typically, we start to move into a period that really kind of kickstarts our spring season. Now, a lot of springs aren't really going to start until April, you know, maybe even May on a lot of major watersheds. Our river kind of kickstarts earlier, especially in the Canyon City to Salida section in Bighorn Canyon, in Canyon City. That lower elevation section of the Arkansas, we start to see huge activity within the stonefly population. Okay, and this is because of a stage in their life cycle called molting. And what happens in a basic sense, you know, is that their exoskeleton changes in composition on a daily basis. It'll harden and soften throughout the day. And so they actually change in color throughout the day. We fish both dark and light variations, okay? And you can also see that flows are falling, okay? That also kind of energizes the trout population. Water temperatures are getting warmer slowly, okay? But once these stoneflies start to crawl, what happens? They crawl like crazy and they get kicked up in the water column. There's another, that's a double cheeseburger, okay? Go ahead. One more. Couple stonefly patterns to look at. Couple of my favorites. John Barr's tongue teaser, great dark variation, okay? Lighter variation, and one of my true breadwinner flies, 365, is Charlie Craven's new 2-bit stone. Just, you know, incredibly durable, 3 tungsten beads. It gets down, it stays down. Fish can see it from a mile away with that little flashback. The epoxy is great. It's a great pattern to have in your box, okay? Now, sizes are anywhere from 8 to 16. I know that's a wide range, but there are just a ton of different stoneflies in our river. The most prevalent is the Californica, the golden stone, but you know, you want to have your bases covered, and I like to fish a lot of smaller stoneflies early in the spring, size 14, 16. Okay, go ahead. And so just a couple others Euro nymphing wise. This is a 20-incher. I bet everybody knows this pattern, old school, tied on a jig hook. Okay, go ahead. Jig stone, just another look at a Euro nymphing style fly. Okay, that's all we want to accomplish here. You know, great way to fish under an indicator or tight lining. You know, great patterns to look at. Okay, Psycho Prince, tied on a jig. Okay. Psycho Prince is one of my favorite patterns in general throughout the year. It's a purple prince, okay? And just a great fly to fish. Go ahead. Okay. So now we've got a building, right, of the stonefly activity. And then we encounter March, which typically brings what? Wind. A lot warmer temperatures in general. Okay, a lot of storms rolling through, a lot of snow usually. Pads are snowpack in March. You know, that's really stuff we have to have. But we have a lot of 60-degree days, a lot of 70-degree days sometimes in March in our area. And so now we're seeing more consistent temperatures, water temperatures in the 40-degree mark. What that means to me is we have huge, you know, a huge upswing in mature betas and mature BWOs, okay? Usually around 40 degrees, we see more active BWO nymph activity. We see, you know, when I seine or if I pump a fish, I'm seeing some really fat, you know, mature BWO nymphs, okay? Once we hit that 45-degree water temp mark, and this is on, all of these things are true on many of your freestone rivers in the state. So if you fish the Eagle a lot, the Roaring Fork, you know, the Colorado, you can take a lot of these things and apply them. Some things are a little bit different, but just remember that. Remember water temperatures, okay? These are really important. So once we hit 45, we start to see a lot of these mayflies, what we term in the drift. They're very active. We see a little bit of hatch activity. We see some emergence, right? you know, and then we've got stoneflies and mayflies, and the fishing just goes berserk, usually in March. March is one of my favorite times, okay? I call it the sleeper hatch, but it's really not a sleeper time period anymore. More and more people are fishing in March. Everybody really thought about the caddis hatch as, hey, that's when I'm gonna get my gear out, dust it off, and get to the Arkansas. Well, you know, you're missing the boat if you're not in, you know, in the area in March. In my opinion, the dry fly fishing in March during the heavy BWO activity from say March to April 15, lot better dry fly fishing than during the caddis hatch. Now, not to say you won't find that special day during the caddis hatch where everything lines up and, you know, it's phenomenal. You catch 100 fish on a dry fly, right? But much more consistent day in and day out in the BWO time period in the spring, okay? A few patterns, okay? This is Shay Gunkel's shot glass. And Shay actually, you know, I get to claim he is my brother-in-law. He's an umpqua designer. I actually taught him how to tie. He is an incredible designer now, a really good dude. If you ever meet him at the fly shows or anything, he's a barrel of fun. But he's got a lot of great patterns to look at that really have crossover on all of our drainages. Go ahead. Yep. Shay Gunkel. Yep. So this is his shot glass series, which is, you know, in my opinion, just use, you know, the things that I look for are, okay, profile, segmentation, and weight. Color comes last for me, okay? Fish see in shades, they really do. So for me, it's more about profile, being in the strike zone, body segmentation. That's key for me. These flies really do a good job of all three of those key categories, right? This is purple. I love purple. Why do we love purple so much? Do what? It's the most visible color in the light spectrum for fish, okay? It's dead on. They can see it. They can see it from a ways away, right? So we see a lot of purple in our dry flies, and our, you know, we're seeing attractor stoneflies with a lot of purple, psychoprints, all those things. That's an important thing to remember. Have plenty of purple in your box. It works. It fishes. Go ahead. Darth Batis, Greg Garcia, local Denver guy, absolute stud, fishes the Arkansas all the time. This is a killer fly for our river. I carry it in purple. I carry it in black, brown, and olive. Size 18 through 22. Okay, go ahead. Batwing, one of my favorite BWO emergers of all time, right? What's key about an emerger, right? The key things to look for in an emerger are, do they capture air, right? When a bug's emerging and popping that wing case, right? What's happening? An air bubble is getting popped through the thorax, right? And so we want to try to replicate that in a pattern. Batwing does it great. It creates that CDC in the wing, creates an envelope, captures air, okay? So that's what you want to look for in a good emerger pattern. Doesn't matter what mayfly it is, that's a thing to look for. Batwing is one of my favorites. Look, segmentation in that body. Okay, go ahead. Flag guns, there's various flag guns. Here's the thing. You got to see the fly. If my client can't see the fly, we're not catching fish. Okay, go ahead. That's a great pattern, right? There's some sailboats on the water to give you a look at the natural. Okay, pretty cool shot. Okay, go ahead. There's a look at the nymph itself. This picture was taken by Juan Ramirez, and you know, a really cool look at kind of what you're looking at and how we're replicating that nymph. Okay, go ahead. Back to some Euro nymphs. Perdigons, okay? All different kinds of colors, different sizes, 12 through 20. I've got boxes of Perdigons, okay? The key to this fly being good is durability, weight, and profile, okay? Epoxy body, it's got that trigger color in the thorax. You'll see a lot of Euro nymphs that have what we term a trigger color, okay? It sets it apart from naturals, okay? It stays in the strike zone with the weight, okay? And it's durable. That, I mean, some great characteristics to this fly. Write Perdigon down and go get some from Orvis Park Meadows or your local fly shop. They're fantastic throughout the mayfly category. Okay, you'll see more in my presentation. There's a pretty cookie cutter brown from the arc from this past spring. You can see snow caps. Okay, so a lot of best weather, you know, and great time to be on the river. Okay, go ahead. Okay, so caddis hatch. Everybody loves the caddis hatch. I love the caddis hatch too. Okay, this is a world famous hatch on the Arkansas. At times in the past, it could have been the largest caddis hatch in the world. Really, it could have been. I feel like we have fewer caddis now, but we have more of a lot of different other bugs, which I'll take every day of the week. Okay, there's still a bazillion of them, and you'll still encounter blizzard hatches some days when you come. Blizzard hatch meaning I can't breathe and I've got to get off the river. You know, it's too many naturals to even compete with, you know. I'll kind of tell you what you do here in a second, right? But general time period, we're looking for 45 plus consistently. I want water temperature lows to hit 45. We need to see more like 50, okay, on your highs. And then we're kind of seeing steady flows, you know, 400, 450. We're dealing with rainbow trout spawning, so typically we're not going to see flows over 500 just because of that, okay? And, you know, just put it in your calendar, pay Uncle Sam and come fish, okay? And spend your return money at the fly shop. Okay, next slide. My next point there was mid-water column is key, okay? I've been guiding on the Arkansas for, this will be my 18th season, and I'll tell you that I catch drastically more fish in the mid-water column than I ever catch on the surface or on the substrate, on the bottom during the caddis season, okay? The big thing here is once caddis start to go through that life cycle and there start to be enough bugs hatching day to day, fish really are reactive to movement at that point in time. And what stage moves the most? Emerger, okay? Mid-water column. Emergent activity is king during the caddis season. If you want to do well, now you can still come and throw a single dry and catch fish, right? But if you want to catch 70 plus fish a day consistently, you're going to fish the emerger and you're going to swing the emerger. Okay, right? Now, what does swinging do to a fly, right? Does everybody understand what swinging is? So if the river is running from left to right, I'm going to make my presentation upstream, okay? Typically, you know, if I'm fishing just, you know, no indicator, straight up emerger rig, or maybe a dry dropper with a dry caddis emerger underneath, I'm gonna make a mend quartering upstream, okay? I'm gonna make a mend, I'm gonna get that drag-free drift, and then I'm gonna come tight to the fly. And that initiates my swing, okay? So it's on the last quarter of my drift. I initiate my swing, I come tight to the fly, and then what does that weighted pupa do? Okay, so it's sunk, cast here, it's sunk, boom, 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 I come tight and boom. And so that swing, that movement is reaction from fish. They're looking for that, okay? And so that is that 6, 7 stage, 6, 7, 8 stage in the life cycle, right? Got our caddis larva, Here, stage 3 through 5, we've got case caddis, which is our brachycentrus caddis. That's the big tax day hatch caddis. We've got 50 different types, right? But if I'm narrowing down on the tax day hatch, it's our case caddis, okay? 50-degree water temp, boom, they start to drift. And then once caddis drift, they blow. The wing case blows. Sometimes mayflies will drift for miles, okay? But caddis don't do that. They you know, boom, to the surface, okay? So then we've got, you know, our adult stage at 8 and 9, right? They go back to the bushes, they do their thing. The female caddis comes back, what's termed the egg-laying caddis at stage 11. Now, if somebody asks me, okay, Taylor, when do you go fish a dry fly during the caddis hatch? Egg layer. And when does that happen? Morning and evening. They come down back to the river from the bushes early and late at low light. That's when it happens. So if you're getting to the river and you want to fish a dry fly and you want to fish an egg layer and you get to the river at 9 o'clock, you've missed it. And if you don't stay until 5 o'clock, you've missed it, okay? The best dry fly fishing during caddis hatches anywhere is the egg layer activity, in my opinion. And that's because you don't have heavy emergent activity that takes the fish's attention, okay? Why would fish chase adults when they've got thousands of emergers emerging in their feeding line? Okay, no reason to. Fish are smart. They don't expend calories unless they need to, unless it's crane fly fishing and you see them jump 3 feet out of the water for one, right? That happens a lot on the Arkansas too, but that's something key to understand if you're a dry fly angler and you want to come, man, I want to dial in those hours. Early, late, egg laying caddis. I'm going to show you a pattern here in a second. Okay, go ahead. Going to go through the life cycle real quickly on pattern. Metallic caddis larva. This is Larry Kingreaves' pattern. A late and great was our head guide for 15 years, and just a phenomenal pattern for any caddis larva. Go ahead. Juan Ramirez's kryptonite caddis. We probably sell 500 to 600 dozen of these a year. Unbelievable pattern. One of our guides, he splits time with us and Anglers Covey, just a phenomenal designer. If you check out his blog at Hopper Juan, or see him on a social media platform, he's just really a great guy, and he will give you a wealth of knowledge if you want to ask questions. Hire him as a guide if you can. I mean, he has limited days, but exceptional guide and designer in our industry, and just really a great guy. Go ahead. Gary LaFontaine's Deep Sparkle Pupa, probably my #1 caddis pattern, period. Okay, this pattern has caught more fish, you know, than I care to count. Tie it with a bead, tie it unweighted. If you have fish slashing just under the surface, that's your unweighted time period. If you see fish, you know, flashing mid-water column, you throw that weighted guy on under a dry in a nymph rig, Euro nymphing with a swing, and you will wreck fish. Great, great pattern. Go ahead. Missing link. This is one of my favorite adults because of its slight profile. I do like adults with slight profiles. If I'm going all out adult fishing and I'm having to compete with a lot of bugs on the water, I want something slight. Okay, so that's key for me. Now, if you come to the Arkansas or you go to the Eagle or the Colorado and you run into a giant blowout blizzard hatch and you're waiting, should you continue to fish in that blowout hatch? Absolutely not. Get in your car and drive typically upriver, get out of that blowout hatch. What we used to say is, you know, drive down the river road until you hit bugs, go another mile and park, right? And that can be true, it still happens, right? But that's the key. Get out of those scenarios. You're still gonna have a lot of bugs on the water typically, but that's a way to get fish is slighter profile flies. And that's across the board, in my opinion. If you are in hatches where fish are being selective, fish a slider profile fly or size down. Okay, that is key. Okay, go ahead. Great egg layer. This is called a clown shoe. How many people have fished this? Okay, phenomenal pattern. Okay, that egg sac sits down underneath the water. You've got the high vis, right? We can see it. We're fishing in low light. Remember, I got to see the fly. Okay, so don't be afraid of, man, I feel like that's too bushy and too much going on over the surface. Well, we're not dealing with what's on top of the surface. Okay, you got to see the fly, and then that egg sac is king. That's what's going to catch fish. Okay, go ahead. Front end loader. This is a Euro nymphing derived dry fly, and it has become one of my favorite egg layer patterns. Okay, a slider profile fly for picky fish. Say they don't eat the clown shoe, and you're sitting in a pocket. You know, you've got a back eddy with 20 fish working the surface, and they just won't take a look at that clown shoe. Well, okay, scale back. This is one that I like. Purple body, visible. It's got that hot section in the butt. That's going to be your egg sac area. It's a really good fly to look at. Okay. Okay, rubber hatch. We know that is runoff. Okay. Typically what we do during that time period is, go ahead, fish high mountain lakes, backcountry streams, and tailwaters. Okay. We've got a lot of that around us. Grape Creek, Badger Creek, Beaver Creek, 50 others on our drainage alone. And then the high mountain lake scenario, it's perfect timing. Runoff, right? Those high mountain lakes are icing off at the same time. Okay, great time to put your boots on and get to work. That's a key thing to remember. How many people fish high mountain lakes in our state? Awesome. Worth every bit of effort, right? Okay, just phenomenal. Go ahead. Okay, then an incredible time period comes around when the river starts to recede. Typically that's the end of June. Okay, we're looking at our flow rate, 2,000 CFS and falling. Don't let that scare you. Okay, we're walking the edges here because all the fish are on the edges. What happens during runoff? All the fish pull to the edges. They're not going to be out on a treadmill, you know, when they can be sitting in pocket water on the edges. Okay, and just so happens that during that time period, go ahead, we have stoneflies hatching. So we can throw big nasties at them. We can throw chubbies. This is a royal chubby. Go ahead. Those are all the chubby colors there: purple, red, white, tan, yellow, obviously, for our golden stone population. But we can throw big dries, throw a dropper if you want to. Typically, it's not necessary. All these fish are within 6 feet of the bank, and they haven't eaten much for about 4 to 6 weeks. Okay. Typically, snowmelt begins around the 3rd week of May, sometimes into the 1st of June, lasts until about the end of June. Key thing is just watch our reports. Every year is a little bit different, right? The heat lamp turns on differently. You know, everything, snowmelt comes down differently, snowpack's different. So this is a moving target, but tie some big dry flies and be ready for some fun on the bank. And don't even pack your waders, wet wade. You know, you don't need to be in the current. I don't want you in the current. Okay, on all these big freestone rivers, same deal, just fish the edges. Okay. Psycho Prince, one of those droppers that I do like to have at hand because it's visible. Throw it a couple feet under a chubby, you know, and go have fun. Okay. Streamers are great too. And typically, like if I'm fishing a section, I'll take 2 rods. Okay. I'll tuck away a streamer rod. I'll fish a dry dropper, moving upstream, covering a section. Okay. Then after whatever, you know, section that is, mile, 2 miles, whatever, I'll tuck the dry rod, I'll come back and I'll fish the streamer. And so basic idea there is if we work going up the bank like this, working the bank, okay, River's running left to right in this situation. I'm coming back. I'll chuck that streamer out into the current tongue. I'll mend, let it get down, and then I just immediately come to a forced swing. I just move the rod tip down, and I almost pop the rod tip into the bank, okay? That forces that fly to just hammer into the bank. And when a fish sees that, man, it's game on. Their reaction is immediate, right? So I've covered all that territory. Give it some time on the dry. Grab your streamer rod, go back through that water and catch some of those bigger fish that maybe didn't react in the dry, right? That's a Sex Dungeon. That's Kelly Gallup's fly, one of my favorites, but there are a lot of great streamers. Don't be afraid to fish big, okay? Double fours, you know, at least sixes. Get their attention. This is not a time to be shy, okay? Go ahead. Pup Monkey, that's one of Kelly Gallup's as well. A horrible fly, great name. Okay. Michael Bennett's Lunch Money. This is one of my favorites. It's not a double. Double meaning 2 hooks. I love to fish 2 hooks. Okay. I don't like any missed strikes. Okay. Don't like short strikes. That happens a lot on streamers. So this is one though that as a beginner angler in the streamer category, maybe something to look at. A little bit easier to throw. A lot of color variations. I like to fish a lot of these darker variations in darker water. Okay. Get that contrast going. So post runoff, I do typically fish a lot of olives, blacks, purple, stuff like that. Okay. Okay. Moving rapidly into summer. You know, so now what we're, again, this is kind of a moving target, but we're talking more July. Okay. Water temperature and flow rate, really important here. Once we get under about 1200 CFS, the river turns into a completely different animal than 1200 plus, okay? River clears dramatically, fish start to spread out, okay? So no more of that fishing in a barrel. They're spread out, okay? They're moving into heavier pocket water, hydraulic water in the middle of the river in some circumstances, okay? And water temperatures raising quite a bit, okay? Up to the 60-degree mark. Even last year with lower water and warm weather, right? We really didn't see over 65. Never really had issues on our river. Don't really ever have issues on our river. We're thankful for that. And again, flow management program comes into play here. We start to release water now. Native might be more like 400 or 500, and that would be something that we'd be concerned with at certain points of time. Instead, it's 700 and 700 plus, no matter what. That is our lowest point, you know, in the VFMP. So we're not going to get under 700 until August 15th. Okay. What comes into play? A lot of yellow, a lot of stoneflies still. A huge upturn in PMD activity, tons of yellow sallies, which are some of my favorites to fish. Tricos, betas start to come around later on, and hoppers are really starting to be prevalent, and we love that hopper dropper fishing. Okay, go ahead. Few yellow sally patterns. This is Sloan's Sally, just a little Sally nymph to throw as a dry dropper. I'm not nymphing a whole lot during this time period, no need to. I'm dry dropper and for the most part, maybe carry a Euro nymphing rod for some of the deeper pockets, but we're fishing a lot out of a boat during this season. So pounding the edges with a dry dropper or streamer is the way to go, and just a blast, right? Okay. There's your yellow Sally natural. So almost translucent bug. They're really cool. Okay. And fish love them. It's like the prime rib or something. I don't know. They will eat them above all others. Top tier. Okay, go ahead. Never sink Sally. Okay, doesn't sink, easy to see, good profile. Okay. PMD. This is Juan Ramirez's Slim Shady Slipback PMD. It has been one of my favorites with the double tungsten. Just one of my pure favorite droppers during the summer season. Okay, go ahead. Larry Kingery's Biot PMD. This is a good classic Biot body, mayfly nymph, tungsten bead. I love these kind of lucent or varnished beads. Work really well with PMD patterns. Okay. Another flag done. Okay. Again, just visible. Okay, that's what you're looking for. Go ahead. Caddis, lots of them during the summer. Continuing to see Brachycentris hatching. We're seeing Glossosoma. We're seeing various other caddis hatching. Tan, olive, black. Okay, go ahead. That's an X2 caddis. Okay, really good one to look at. There's your Perdigon again. Yellow. Okay. And who doesn't love wet wading? Great time to wet wade. Great time to get wet, fall in the river a couple times. But yeah, I mean, I love this season. It's just so much fun, right? Don't be intimidated by rivers like the Arkansas at 700 to 1200. A lot of people say, man, I just can't do that. It's like wade where you feel safe. Go to a boat ramp and fish the first 6 feet of the bank, and you're going to catch 20, 30 fish. You don't have to wade like a madman to catch a lot of fish. But if you're gung-ho and love to do it, man, you can cover some territory during this time period and really catch a boatload of fish, right? And a great time to float, like I said, okay? All right, hopper dropper season. You know, pretty much a continuation of what we've talked about in the previous slide, but you know, you're starting to see a little bit lower flows once we get beyond August 15th. Fish are really spread out, and you can see how clear the river is there, right? Getting a little bit more technical. Nymphing comes into play a little bit more. Fish are a little bit deeper. They're a little bit more selective, okay? So, you know, early and late is key, right? If you're not fishing early and late during the summer season in that dog days of summer, you are not catching fish. I can tell you that. We're getting trips out at 5:30, you know, during this time period. There's just no reason not to be on the water early and off the water early, okay? And keep in mind on our drainages, more and more pressure, more and more people in the state. And during hot time periods, you're putting a lot of pressure on fish during the middle of the day, okay? Whether there's food owl restrictions or not, you need to be protective of our resources, and I know you are because you're TU members, but it's something to educate other people about too, you know. But there's no reason why you can't double down on days. Go early, go take a siesta, drink a couple cervezas, and go back out in the evening, you know. Okay, go ahead. Basic dry dropper rig, okay? I think everybody knows this. Go ahead. Juan's hopper wand, that's one of my favorites. His Hollywood hoppers, one of my favorites as well. You know, he does a great job with foam. There's so many good foam hoppers out there, right? Charlie Boy hopper, go ahead. Full toys, party animal. This is Andrew Grillis' party animal. Visible, floats well, supports weight well. That's going to be the key during this time period is get flies that you're really confident in that can hold up a heavy tungsten fly or two, dry copper dropper, right? That's definitely in the wheelhouse, especially when fish are deep and when the water's clear and when fish are selective and just don't want to move to take a fly, okay? Get deeper on them, okay? Go ahead. Thunder Thighs hopper, one of the more realistic hoppers out there, okay? Fat Alberts, Full Toys, like I said, they're all good ones. Okay. Guide's Choice Hares here. Got to have this in your box in the summer. Okay. This is probably my #1 producing fly in a size 12 through 18. Okay. In the late summer season, it just fishes as so many different things. Stoneflies, PMD, Yellow Sally. It's got that nice, you know, schlop and hackle collar. You can't beat a hare's ear, man. I'm telling you, it's just such a productive fly. Great still water fly as well. Okay, so have plenty of these in your box in the late summer time period. Okay. Pheasant tail on a jig. This is a CDC version. How many people tie your pheasant tails with CDC collars? Start. It's a great way to add movement to your fly. Pheasant tail is a heavily fished fly. Remember that. How do we set our patterns apart from other anglers? Okay. CDC is a great way to do that on a pheasant tail. It's a great producer for me. Okay. Go ahead. 2 fish at once happens a lot. Okay. Dry, nymphs trailing it. Man, fish are just aggressive during this time period at times. Okay. Go ahead. All right, and then kind of moving into autumn. You know, we've covered a lot of bugs, right? In this kind of, you know, it's a lot to remember, but there are a lot more bugs. We go into the fall and we've got 3 different kinds of drakes. We've got red quills, which are my focal point. This is a huge red quill river. And, you know, one of my favorite times to fish in the evenings is during those red quill spinner falls. One of my favorite times, period, all season long. It's just magical to fish in the evenings in September, maybe early October, sometimes late August. Have a massive red quill spinner fall. You'll have hundreds of fish up. I mean, it's just incredible. So fun time to be there. And it's just fun to fish a size 10 or 12 mayfly, right? In that drake category, that's pretty hard to beat, okay? Film Critic, that's a great drake there. That's your gray drake, okay? Michael Lawson's extended body green drake, that's probably my #1 green drake to fish. If you fish the Pan or the Fork a lot, Colorado, this is probably my #1. Just an incredible fly, been around a long time, okay? Anatome, we were talking about this earlier, Brian, just caught my eye in his bin. I was like, man, you know about that pattern. That's a great drake imitation. People don't fish drake nymphs as much as they need to, right? I think we all think about the drake hatch and then we're like, man, I don't really think about the nymph as much, right? We're chasing the hatch. Have a good green drake nymph. Charlie Craven has a 2-bit drake. That's a really good one too. Okay, go ahead. There's that radiation beta coming around, copper orange. That's Shay Gunkel's fly. Tie it with single oversized tungsten bead or 2 tungsten beads. This is an incredible red quill or just pure attractor fly in the fall. Okay, go ahead. And your spinner, this is a profile spinner, high vis in the red quill category, easy to see, and just a dramatic producer for me during those evening spinner falls. Okay. Tricos, we start to get into 2-bits, you know, your 2-bit hooker category. We start to see some BWOs as well. Good crossover fly. The 2-bit hookers, of course, a great producer on every watershed in the state. Okay. Vertigon, purple. Okay, go ahead. And then the low water betas, when fish get picky, and this counts for our BWO season in the spring. This fly sits super low, hence the name, and it produces really well when I've got a lot of bugs on the water. Good body segmentation, relatively easy to see too. It's one to remember for sure, okay? Trico, this is a chubby trico. Definitely, you have to have tricos in your box in the fall, right? Whether you're fishing flat, fishing the arc, any river in the state, your trico is gonna be king at some point or another. Gotta have a good trico presence in your box, okay? Streamer time, and we used to say this was the fall, right? Because we're, you know, majorly brown trout population, 80% plus. We're getting to see more and more rainbows though, basin wide, and you know, streamer time is really any time if you know how to fish them, okay? The best time to fish them as a beginner angler is probably in the fall because, you know, fish are pre-spawn, brown trout populations pre-spawn, they're very aggressive, they're very territorial. That fishing in a barrel time period is great because every fish is aggressive, okay? But yeah, I mean, come with your streamer box every time you hit the river, especially from March on through the fall. It's definitely a lot of fun and a great place to do it for those of you who haven't done much streamer fishing. Okay. Loop knot, I'm not going to cover this. Let's go to the next slide. Loop knot is key for your streamer rigging. If you have any questions on that for your first fly, for your lead fly, that's key for me. We talked about the swing, but this is a good visualization of what I'm talking about. But the river, of course, you can see the current tongue. The river's running right to left here. A position is your presentation, quartering upstream, men B position, okay? And then we're just coming tight to the fly, okay? Rod tip down in the water. When a fish hits, boom, a lot of times they're gonna hook themselves, but don't lift the rod tip, just strip. Okay, fish on, all right? Circus peanut, great tandem fly, okay, double fly rather. One of my favorites, very similar to a sex dungeon. Okay, go ahead. Lunch money again, just as a refresh, go ahead. Great trailer fly for a tandem streamer rig. How many people fish tandem streamer rigs? Awesome. Should be. A lot of times what happens if you have that big attractor streamer up front, fishing it single, fish chases, boom, 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 right up on the fly and peels off, right? What happens if we throw a less obtrusive fly behind it? Thin mint like this, or even like a rubber leg stone. That's one of my key little don't tell anybody, okay? Hare's ear, something like that. You throw it underneath that streamer, right? Fish reacts to the fly. Chase, chase, chase. Boom, that flies right in his face. Game over, okay? That's why we fish tandem streamer rigs, okay? Go ahead. Another great one, Rick Takahashi's mini minnow. That's been a key producer for me, especially during the spawning seasons, because you've got a lot of fry around, you've got a lot of small baby fish, and fish are just territorial, so they chase other guys out, okay? And there's a recent rainbow on a pretty big fly. That's a Nancy P, and that flies like this long, okay? So yeah, they eat them. Good. Okay, so a few resources for you before we wrap up, and a little bit about access, just briefly. And again, like I said, this is such an enormous river, just, you know, most public access of any river in the state. You see all of these text links, those are all access points, okay? And that's pretty mind-boggling, okay? But if you go to our website, royalgorgeanglers.com, I'll show you the link here later if you forget. You go to our map resources, our interactive map link. It's on the very bottom of our website at the homepage, and it's also on one of our drop downs. Easy to find wherever you're at on the website. This map was produced by Arkansas Headwater Rec Area in collaboration with some of the recreational businesses like ourselves. Great resource for free. Now, there's also those other resources. Onyx is a great one. For those that are hunters out there, that's a phenomenal resource for fishing as well. Download a map grid, and you can use it off grid, right? This, you would need internet. So this is like research stage here, and then one of those other apps on your phone if you need it for when you're on the river, okay? Go ahead. This just gives you a snapshot. If you were to click one of those links, gives you an idea of, hey, okay, Google Earth shot of the river. We can see parking areas, we can see drainages, we can see those things, we can see highway, and we see all of our agreement areas as well as private property. Here's your legend. Every link on that map looks like this. Hopefully that's helpful. It's a lot to absorb, but it's a starting point, okay? Go ahead. Just a snapshot at the river, okay? So Leadville, our headwater, river is a little creek, okay, for a little ways. Then we meet Twin Lakes, okay? So Lake Creek enters the river, contributes quite a bit of water to the river system, And, you know, then not long after that, Clear Creek. Okay, so those are our two contributing tail races on the river. Then we've got a little more of a riverbed downstream, right? Got a little more flow down there. We enter the Numbers, which is a famous whitewater area. Great pocket water fishing in there as well. And then we move down into BV, into the Buena Vista area, which there's a lot of good public access in Buena Vista. Anybody fish in that area? Great. So, you know, anywhere from like Cobe, which is upstream, down through BV, man, there's great water in there. And it's a much smaller river up there. Okay. Good. Look at kind of the river above Buena Vista. Snapshot of the river there. So, and this is pretty big flow. This is like 800 up there. Okay, so that's pretty big. That's as big as you're probably ever going to see it up there. Okay, go ahead. Then we move down into Browns Canyon and go ahead. National Monument, 21,000 acres. If you haven't checked it out, you have to. It's gorgeous. So many, you know, different wildlife in there, and, you know, great access for you. All public. Great trail systems from both the top and the bottom. Okay. Ruby Mountain is one of my favorite access points on the river, entire river. Get into Browns. It's just a great area to experience. Great place to float fish if you haven't done that. Okay. And we do that. So if you ever want to check out Browns that way, it's a great way to do it, less rugged. Okay, go ahead.
Those trails you mentioned at the top of the bottom.
Ruby?
They get you close to the river?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They wind back down. So, you know, you got to put in some effort to get into Browns. That's why it's so special, unless you're floating it, right? But yeah, Hecla Junction at the bottom. Ruby at the top. Those are good access points for you. Hecla, you need the water to be lower. You got to cross down there to really effectively access it. Okay. But yeah, one of my buddies, Kyle Perkins, who's been involved in Colorado TU, many of you probably know him, fishing Browns. Just a look at kind of what the scenery looks like. It's just gorgeous in there. Okay. Rugged. Plenty of rapids in there. You know, this is, you know, definitely a rugged part of the river, but just gorgeous. I mean, giant plunge pools, pockets, some really nice fish in there. Not as nice a fish as you find in Bighorn Canyon or in Canyon City, or even in the Salida area proper, just because the growing season is so small in Browns. Okay, but high density of fish, 6,500 to 7,000 fish per mile on average. So, yep. Then Bighorn Canyon, which is our major focal point. Obviously, we're right at the bottom of Bighorn, and the gold medal section starting here at Parkdale and moving on up. And so Bighorn is a phenomenal resource to everyone because, man, Highway 50 runs it. Great rec areas along it, great unmarked, you know, access points, great BLM, Forest Service, great camping opportunities, and to be on a major highway, unbelievable fishing. It's just pretty mind-boggling that you can walk 5 feet from your car and catch fish here, right? And of course, areas where you walk in a little bit more, you're going to catch more fish, right? But yeah, Bighorn's great. Okay. The Royal Gorge, which is phenomenal. We do run adventure trips, fly fishing trips through the gorge. It's a minimum of 2 boats. We have to have a safety boat. It's class 5. So a lot of fun if you're a thrill seeker, and some enormous fish. Those fish that I showed you from Canyon, plenty of those in the gorge. They get 0 pressure. There's no access waiting. I mean, you're talking about Colorado in the 1700s in the gorge, fishing wise, right? That's what it is. Okay. Okay. Yep.
Looking at a satellite map, just Sort of short and thick, is there a trail or a bike path? Is there on the north side of the
It's called
river?
Tunnel Drive.
Does that provide any access to the
No.
river there?
Unfortunately, there's a railroad track between you and the river, and there's no, you got to cross it, right? And so while the railroad line in Bighorn Canyon and upstream is not used, it's impassable. So we use it a lot, and there's no regulation against that in Bighorn. You can't do it down there. That's Royal Gorge Route. That's the scenic railroad, with #1 scenic railroad in the state. And so, yeah, you get in big trouble for getting in there, unfortunately. Now, if you want to fish it, I know a guy. We have private access on the other side of the river. We own some property on that side, and so we can access the entire gorge wading from the bottom on that side. Yep. Okay. That's a shot from our property on the lower rim. So that's right below the Royal Gorge there. This is just below where Great Creek dumps in to the river, so not far above Canyon City. But yeah, breathtaking area, really gorgeous river down through Canyon City. Check it out. Great river walk trail. We have 7 miles of public access on the south side of the river in Canyon City. A lot of fish in there, and it will be gold medal in the next couple years. It probably qualifies right now, but it's a great opportunity for you. Okay. Arkansas tailwater, I'm only going to spend a minute or two on this, but we guide on the Arkansas tailwater. We've got the oldest permit on the tailwater, and it's a great resource for those of you in the metro area that want to fish in the winter. And it's just consistent. It's consistent day in and day out. It's a great producer. There's a lot of fish there. It can be technical. You need to know what you're doing when it's got heavy pressure on it like it does now. But man, you can go catch a 20-inch fish every day of the week. Every day of the week. Okay. And much bigger. Show you a few from this past year. Go ahead. Gorgeous fish in the tailwater too. And they're starting to turn already. I think it's just warmer water. I've seen a few fish already on reds. Tailwaters are screwy like that. We have fish that spawn year round, as you guys know, that fish Deckers and 11 Mile Canyon and all Cheeseman. But yeah, they are gorgeous fish. A lot of GRRs, a lot of Hofer strain rainbows, and a lot of wild browns too. Okay. Okay, go ahead. Here's some fish from the tailwater, and all four of these fish, actually, I didn't recognize that. All 4 of these fish are caught while we're floating. Okay, this is one of the cool things that we do that nobody else does on the tailwater, is fish the tailwater when nobody else fishes it, and that's when they're releasing a lot of water. Okay, you can't wait it safely, when they're releasing, and so this is a time period that we really take advantage of. We use boulder boats, and we have specific launch points that we've figured out, and a lot of big fish come out of that river during that time period. Okay. You can kind of see the flow rate when that is, right? June is when we really crank that. It's only about a month and a half where we really do that program, but it's fun. We really have limited availability because this has been a sought after program for our repeat guests, but it can be a lot of fun if you're interested. Okay. There's a few biggies in there. Yeah. And that's in the fall. That was this past fall. So past fall, maybe 2 years ago. Okay. I did write the chapter for Wendy and Terry Gunn's 50 best tailwaters to fly fish on the Arkansas tailwaters. You can pick up that chapter on Amazon on its own for $5. Okay. So if you want to learn more about the tailwater, pick that up. And there's more about the tailwater in the fly fisherman article too. Go ahead. Okay, our website, royalgorgeanglers.com. Go ahead. Check that out at your leisure. Go ahead. You can book guided trips and see availability online. That's really easy, or you can call us toll free anytime. We guide on the Arkansas, obviously, Freestone, Tailwater, the Gunnison, We have launch dates in the Black Canyon as well. Limited launch dates there, but do that. We guide powerboat trips on Spinney and Antero, which are a lot of fun. And our backcountry program has really been a lot of fun on small streams. We are now doing a limited date stuff, but overnight backcountry trips, which are pretty neat too. Okay, go ahead. Okay. Shop online. We've got 10,000 items online. We've got a warehouse in Canyon City, and then we've got the fly shop, obviously. One-day delivery to you guys in the metro area. Okay. Go ahead. All these flies that we talked about, all on our website. Everything. Okay. So if you've taken notes there and you want a few samples, we sell 3-packs for most, and then streamers, 1s and 2s. But yeah, check it out, and happy to help you with that stuff too. Destination travel. If you have any questions, let me know, but that's a whole nother bag of worms there. So, okay. Go ahead. Reports. How many people use our fishing reports? Hopefully a lot of you. Hopefully they're helpful. We try to update them as much as we can. And I've started to, over the last 3 to 4 years, do video reports, which are lengthy but detailed. Okay. I just put one up about the fishing in January, which we don't do a lot, but it's great fishing right now for the time period. So, okay, go ahead. Okay. And one more. Our learning center is great for you beginners and advanced anglers. Check that out. Okay. Go ahead. Social media. I'm just rolling through all this. Keep going. Check out Facebook and Instagram. That's my plug on social. That's all. And last slide. Okay. Thank you.
It's comments. If you have any questions, let me know afterwards. We probably want to get right into the raffles.
So happy to stay for a few minutes and answer any questions, and call us anytime or email us. Grab a rack card if you haven't. And thanks again. Thanks for being here. You know, it's awesome to see everybody. Okay. Thanks. Thanks.
Okay, good. The last four numbers, 7586. 7586. Yeah. Oh. I got the 86. Yeah. That's 7573. 7573. Seven, 3, 5, 9. 5, 9. Seven, 5 or 7, 3? 7, 2, 3, 5, 9. No. 7657.
7657. Seven, 4, 6, 5.